So you might be questioning yourself how the hell you plan to bring the witches from the witch huts to this AFK point, so you can kill them with your looting to get the promised raids. Especially now with piston translocation is fixed. And you are correct, even more so, you even just gave me the answer. How the hell? Through the hell. So they will be spawning on these platforms, getting shot off by skeletons into this chute, where they will be pushed by water streams into these portals. Not having a high drop chute will allow us to have the AFK platform as high as we have it at this moment, and placing portals at the water stream limit actually turns out perfectly that it is the required distance to have no light to leash from the portals to the farm area through this slot. Since all the portals in the Nether will be close to the bedrock, the closest portal to link up will be one of the portals we just created below the bedrock. Then we have a small challenge, because we need to get the witches out of this portal and let them walk into the other portal in at least 30 seconds to let their portal cool down, so to speak. The good thing is the fact that not only their despawn timer will be reset as they change the dimension, they will also not even check for despawning, because mobs calculate their despawning chances based on position of the closest player in the dimension, which if there is none, it will prevent them from despawning at all, giving us plenty of time to deal with them. A small note, if you play with other people, if there's anybody in the Nether, these witches will immediately despawn. Also, to allow witches to move around, we will need to chunk load this 5x5 area right from the center chunk, which is just nothing crazy, we just want it to be entity processing. So after at least 30 seconds, we will ask them politely to go back through this portal, which we have a few blocks higher than the entrance portal, and it can be the same portal as well, to be honest. Since their Y value when leaving the Nether will be close to 120, they won't go back to the farms, but to the portal conveniently placed just above our AFK spot. And that's how they will be dropped to one-hit kill just at our feet. What a coincidence. Now, this portal here will be trapped, and might be a death trap for a player as well. That's why we have to make sure when player crosses from the Nether, it doesn't end up in this portal, that is a trap, but the portal above it. And that's why we need this portal here we built at the beginning very high in the Nether, so it links up safely with the portal above it, rather than the trapped portal for the witches. So in total, to operate witches and players trans-dimensional transportation, we will be needing in practice 4 portals in the Nether and 4 in the overworld. If we decided not to do this AFKing that high, the Nether portal linking would be a tad simpler, which is pretty much inevitable if you have, for example, a quad witch configuration. What will happen next is pretty much dictated by the drop rate. We cannot simply drop them onto hoppers, because we will have a hard time collecting these drops, and it will also be not that fun. What we will do instead is to drop them on fence gates, instead letting their drop to fall on the ground, where they will be pushed below this river bank here and stored in the new witch hut we will be building, an appropriate home for both our guest witches. So we're now in the creative world here when I was planning all the stuff here, and for the case how to drop them, we have at least a few options. One is more traditional, dropping them from about 30 blocks with 2 possible heights of catching them, so that we can either kill them in place, like that, or allow them to survive. So we can kill them with our looting swords. Other method would be to drop them from way higher to kill them automatically, and optionally pass them through some lava for manual killing. Lava reduces fall damage in an interesting but hard to control way. It reduces the fall height by 50% every tick an entity is in lava. So if you locate the lava blade in a block that takes them to go through in 1 tick, will essentially reduce the distance of the falling above the lava block by 50%. There are several benefits to this solution. We will be also getting fire resistance potions, not only health potions, which are arguably much more useful. And since killing would be happening at the same level regardless of the option, it will be easier for us to wire the redstone wires. There's however a few issues with this option. First problem is the higher drop chute, and with our current AFK position, this would also mean that we wouldn't be able really to link the portals on the Nether side, as we are already really close to the bedrock. I could have lowered the AFK position, which would work just fine, but there's another problem: fire resist potions. While arguably more useful than health potions, this solution would yield only a few of them, and we wouldn't be able to sort them out automatically, which just means more pain in the butt. Because let's be honest, potions from the looting base witch farms are pretty much a nuisance. So this simpler, more standard solution, while theoretically less beneficial and messier in terms of redstone, would actually work better in our case. So anyways, let's finish up all the other components, the AFK spot, the storage and the nether part. So we are back in the creative world. I want to show this contraption here. So instead of packing everything automatically to the shulker boxes, since the most important resources for this farm need crafting anyways, I decided to use regular chests. So this is a simple shulker box packer. Nothing fancy nor super compact, but does the job. Obviously, one could attach a hopper to the front, but the main function for this is to use manually. You can simply shift click the chest worth of stuff into it, and it will store this and give you a new one. The reason is I found that the most annoying part in transporting goods from farms is the fact that you need to place all the shulker boxes for stuff on the ground and then break them and pick them up afterwards, fiddling with the hotbar and switching places with the shulker boxes and stuff. So the role of this contraption is to automate that part of the process, and does it pretty well. The actual design of this shulker box packer is too wide, but it needs a reset functionality which can be either mounted on top or on the side of it, and since we already have a 3 wide space here ready for the storage, I went with this slightly shorter design but slightly wider. Now let's discuss the farms. First thing, since we are building these farms out in the world, not in the voided perimeter, I made sure golems are properly protected by glass. Leaving them open would risk that a stray skeleton from outside of the farm could potentially see the golem and shoot them down, which would be bad. Also, I could have left the farm just like that and it would be working just fine, but this would be simply ugly. Just a big glass box not fitting within the look and feel of this place. And I know many people leave them farms like that, but it's not my style. In terms of the light cover, 2 notes here. This is your bog standard shape of the roof above the witch farms to cause all the light levels inside the farms that should drop to 0. But it's not actually exactly what we will need here. First of all, if you are building here out in the wild and not in some sort of avoided perimeter, some daylight might be retained in both canopies of the existing trees around, as well as shallow waters around the farm. Since they are glitched out, if you work in this area for a long time, these ghost lights will eventually disappear. But just a short note, in case you build a witch farm, you build a roof and light still shows up on your platforms. Just chop down the suspected trees or drain some of the water and you should be good. But there's another issue here. If we stand in these trapdoors, we can see that the light level shows up at 0, but there's a little bit of some light tint around them. And this is due to the fact that trapdoors will borrow a higher light level from neighbors, which also affects spawning rates. And means that we need a little bit more space covered above the farm so the trapdoors have light levels of 0 around them as well. Also, since we have here water curtain, the roof doesn't have to be symmetric, as light levels will be dissipating faster on the curtain side. So that's the final shape of the required roof around this particular farm design. So it's a little bit more on this side and a little bit less on that side. This provides 100% spawning chances of all the spawning spots in the farm. You can also notice that the roof I put in is not directly above the top spawning platform but much higher. And the reason is, while we need the roof at some point to block the daylight, as long as it's within the same subchunk as the farm spawning layers, the witches should be spawning at their best. And placing it higher gives us a little bit of space for some creativity, so to speak. So the plan would be to disguise our farms under some giant willow trees, and we'll be using this space for the tree canopy. When I was young, I remember willow trees creating these giant covered spaces under their branches, going down almost to the ground with a short but thick trunk that would quickly thin out into the canopy, so it would be great to use them to cover our witch farms. So since light shines through the leaves, we'll need to make a shell first of something similar, so I thought green stained clay would do the job. And then, when we are done, we can cover them with leaves, which in the swamp matches the hue of the clay very, very well. Also, since leaves extend spawnable space as well, we'll be making sure that the top layer of leaves doesn't extend Y78, so we are in the 5th subchunk, meaning that we can put clay up to Y77, so we can cover it with leaves later. And we can build stuff around the farm pretty much anywhere, with the obvious exception of the spawning layers, that's kinda obvious, and making sure that all the blocks up to 5 blocks out in all directions from the spawning layers at the feet level of the witches have no solid blocks, since any attempt that could potentially start in one of these blocks can end up in the witch hut area and spawn a bunch of witches for us. Blocks outside of this area have no importance on spawning whatsoever, obviously providing they don't emit any light. So is this design a full 100% efficient? The answer is yes and no. Yes, it will take all the chances it is possible to spawn a witch. But on the other hand, skeletons will take their sweet time to shoot them down, and since we'll be AFKing more than 32 blocks away from this place, it is technically possible that a witch will stay longer than 30 seconds here and despawn. This is an efficient farm, but definitely not the fastest. So how big of a problem that is? And to answer that, I added some extra code to the witches, and any witch that despawns on its own and have standed on packed ice at some point in its life will report when and where it despawned. And upon running the setup in creative for 2 hours, I got 2 such reports, which means that it is possible, but it's only about 1 over 7,500 of chance for this to happen, which brings the loss to about the range of 0.01%, so it's nothing to worry about. In terms of the killing mechanism, instead of using hoppers, I will be using fence gates here, which will close for a moment when the witch passes through this tripwire above. And we have here a little pulse extender, and providing the signal is faster than the falling witch, it should catch it. If a player sits in this tripwire over here, this will also enable the upper fence gate, which causes the witches to drop to one-hit kill rather than kill them in place. And we should be able to conveniently kill them up from here. For those witches, there's also an extra tripwire that will keep the upper fence gate closed regardless of the pulse extender in case player misses a swipe, which will release as long as there is no witches here in this chamber. So let's quickly demonstrate on ourselves how this all is going to look like. So let's pretend we are a witch, we get knocked out from this platform, there will be water streams here and we'll end up in the Nether. Where we have these 3 donkeys in the minecarts that push us out of the portal, since otherwise it was common for the witches to group up in the corners of the portal and get cramped. And these horses or donkeys, they actually prevent that. We also need 1 donkey here in this corner as well for the same reason. We have here a trapdoor that would allow witches to sit here in this corner indefinitely, but the horse or a donkey is large enough to push the witches out of this particular place. Once the witches are in this conveyor here, it will push them slowly through to get them to the other portal when their portal cooldown wears off. So let's check how it's done. So we have here a simple clock with a pulse limiter, passing this pulse 4 repeater ticks apart from each other onto all those pistons. And speed is not an issue in this case as long as it's slow enough. At the end we have this slime block launcher that would send a pack of witches that we have collected here in the back to the overworld. So let's hop in. So this idea for a trapdoor conveyor belt I had before when I was working on my blaze farms, but I realized I needed less and less redstone and I can rely more on AI to move blazes about. But here, since there is no player, we need some mechanic device to push the witches. So when we get to the overworld, we'll be pushed with this boat with chickens inside on the other side of the portal. I tried with a horse before, but single horse wasn't large enough and this portal was only 2 wide, so witches eventually created a pocket in the corner and at some point simply crammed themselves and crammed the horse to death as well. A boat, since it cannot be pushed, could be positioned precisely, pushing the witches effectively to the dropship. So after splitting, the remains of the witches will be collected by these water currents and sent through the elevator into the storage room. So let's start decorating. But we'll have to do something also with this thing in the sky because it's ugly and out of place at this point. It will still look out of place regardless what we do with it, let's be honest, but at least we can make it a little bit prettier. So let's roll that time-lapse. So now it starts looking good, isn't it? Decorating is not my strongest point in the game, but at least I tried to get better at it. We have this floating ice spikes type island with a lake to catch us if you have troubles with landing in it. Here's the AFK spot for a player. We build this collection point for the drops, barely covering all the redstone using item sorters as these roof overhangs. Did you see that? Whatever. The idea was to build something similar in look and feel to the original witch hut, but bigger and grander, as this will be now home for not one but 2 witches, which will drop here to the attic when everything is done. Obviously the access to the attic, which hosts the sorters, will be kinda limited, but it will be also possible to access the filters here through the roof. As you can see, the sorters here are not the overflow protection type ones, but the regular ones, and even I put some more sorting fillers here so the hoppers can pick up more items at once. We are killing witches here in batches, and the drops land also in batches, and it's possible that a larger stack of redstone, for example, shows up at the sorter, and it wouldn't be able to pick up all these relevant items. With such configuration, each hopper will be able to pick almost entire stack of items at once, which allows me to pick all the items that might be showing up at the first relevant hopper. We have here 2 column space for all the main witch drops and 3 for sticks. This might not be enough for the sticks, but who cares about them? In this corner we have a single column for sugarcane. Guys, we are here almost 6,000 blocks away from home, through the Nether. I don't want to realize here I forgot my rockets with all this gunpowder here. So we'll need a tiny bit of sugarcane just to craft a few rockets to be able to go back home. The last 4 columns are for garbage and health potions, which is also garbage. These will be filling up the quickest. Since the farm will be producing more than a double chest of each regular ingredient per hour, this storage should be sufficient for about 6-7 hours of AFKing with looting, which makes me a little bit worried because it's not even a full night. So I'm already thinking about extending this storage a little bit. I could have shulker box packing stations, but things like redstone glowstone, as I said, we will need to craft first into blocks, so I'll leave the regular chest for now. We'll see. Before we check on the farms, one more addition. Normally mobs spawn best in full darkness, but this would mean that we wouldn't also be able to see what happens inside of our farms. And that would be bad. We could have used night vision potions to see inside the farms, but wouldn't it be cool if we could light up the place on the client side only and leave the entire thing dark on the server side? Then we would be able to peek inside of the farms while allowing the witches to spawn here. And we could achieve it using one thing. The ghost block technology. Here we have a Myren Eario's 1.9 and up compact ghost block generator. We have seen it in action with the drawbridge in the first episode of the World Tour. And this time around we'll be using it to generate ghost lights. First, this contraption generates ghost blocks to the side, like so. But if we replace this sticky piston here and it to point it up, And if we place the slime block here instead, we just need to make this block immovable, and we should be able to generate blocks upwards. Yep, it works. So the entire setup would be looking like that. We have here almost filled column with regular blocks, some lying below the ground, pushing 2 ghost blocks inside this column into that position. Then we'll be sending a signal to the piston up top, and if we are on the server side, it will just do nothing, but if we are on the client side, it will push this column of blocks, revealing our lights. These lights will not be visible for the server, making us able to see what's going on, and the server to spawn witches as it should. Also, by pushing these lights, we will be uncovering the sky axis at this location, providing us also with full daylight, so it's even better visible during the day. So, I think the farms themselves look pretty spiffy. And we have got our lighting set up as well, hooked up here to this button. The plan is for each tree to have its own button, but also to turn the lights automatically, or at least most of the times, when I load all these chunks. So here, if we climb up here, we can see that I use observers to block daylight, and the reason is there is not that many blocks that are full, opaque blocks that do not count as full cubes. And I wanted here to prevent blocking of the spawning spaces, because as you can see, we are here on the feet level of the potential witches to spawn on the top floor. So we have here a little bit different use for the observers here. So to turn on the ghost light automatically, I came up with this circuit. This is a time skip detector. It can detect whenever the time has detected by these daylight and nightlight sensors changed by more than 1 redstone level. So if you just have it running along with you, nothing is going to happen. But if you happen to load the chunks that was last loaded in a different time of the day, or weather is changing, or simply a player has slept through the night, this will detect those. Yeah, and this circuit might be useful, for example, with the beds and sleeping. For example, if you want to send a remote signal to spawn or something like that. So that's where I've hidden all this circuitry for now. But as you can see, it is not connected to anything yet, and the reason is quite trivial. I kinda run out of me redstone. But it shouldn't be a problem once we fire up the farms for the first time. So now, once the farms are in this finalish shape, we can try to get the skeletons in. Obviously, we will be getting them from the spawner I showed at the beginning, and obviously we'll be transporting them in minecarts and keep them in minecarts as a matter of fact. I will discuss the stages of the transport in a moment, but while you're at it, I'll show you how we'll be dropping them down. And for that, we'll be using this setup, which is significantly simpler than the skeleton loader that Dude showed in his tutorial for his farm. Instead of having 3 layers of rail tracks, there will be only 1 level like so, and once we drop a skeleton into the lowest floor, I'll be then blocking them off and place a trapdoor for the skeletons right above it. And when we run the second minecart, we'll be able to pull all of them skeletons here in 1 column with relative ease. Obviously all of this will be done under invisibility potion. So far they haven't screwed up the invisibility effects for skeletons yet, so we might as well use it. So we are now next to the double witch hut, and this hole here I have hidden the repacking center for the skeletons. They'll be arriving here from the spawner, landing in this pool where I will be able to drop them some appropriate clothing which are here, and then send them over to a similarly temporary setup, and lower right next to the respective farms. So let's grab a ride and check what's done on the spawner side. So as you can see, as simple and minimalistic as it can be. I didn't even change the dungeon's dimensions, and it's actually better if the skeletons will be showing up sporadically, one by one. At the end, I only care for 30 appropriate skeletons total. The cool thing about the setup is the fact that it is within the view distance from the skeleton routing cell, but more than 128 blocks away from it, which means that if I send over by accident an empty minecart, it will be fine, or a skeleton that didn't pick up anything, it will just despawn and wouldn't mess up with my current skeleton collection. So how this works, we can request a skeleton here, and if it's not good, I can just click here and grab the minecart as well and get the next one. But if it's someone I want to keep, and I'm looking here for plain undressed skeletons that will pick up my enchanted with punch 2 and flame primarily for decoration bows, I can send it over to the dressing room. So let's go to work. So as you can see, it didn't went out that smoothly. I sent the first pull of my skeletons and didn't have this extra glass over here. I dove down to get the minecarts here back for the next round, and one of the skeletons saw me and shot one another by accident. And very quickly I ended up with only a few left. But this only set me back, let's say, 15 minutes to get the new set of 15 skeletons, and this time around I was super careful so they don't see me. So as you can see, the skeletons are nicely placed inside the cells, and the only thing that is missing is to light up the terrain and invite the golems. So we are here in the middle of testing of the lighting process, and I am here at the AFK spot for the player during the day. I cranked up the spawn rates for hostiles 5 times, as well as cranked up the mob caps 5 times as well, to test how well we did on the lighting below. And in this position it was literally 3 sections of caves, one end of one ravine, and that's pretty much all of it. So as you can see, we are typically getting a few mobs in the hostile mob cap, which to be honest I don't care too much about. In the actual world with normal spawning rules, this means 5 times less mob, so below 1 at a time, which I'm fine with. So our double witch farms design for my testing is using about 30 spots in the mob cap, and will only slow down if the other 40 from the mob cap are full, which is never the case at this moment. The situation however changes if we switch to the night. As we can see, almost instantly the mob cap fills up, meaning that if we would run this farm at this point of time, we'll be getting pretty much nothing at all. To figure out exactly where the problem lies, we can use carpet mode functionality like track spawning, but in this case a good old spectator mode is just sufficient. By switching to spectator, we not only prevent new mobs from spawning, but also prevent existing mobs from despawning, so we can observe with our own eyes where are the areas within 128 blocks away from the AFK spot that needs some extra enlightenment. So the area where we did all the pumpkins and carpets look decent. Mind you, spawning is now cranked up 5 times, but look at this mess. So I'll take a few screenshots here. Also on this hill, this portion of the hill is still within the range. So if you circle around, it also goes on this hill a little bit. We can see through this bog, which needs some lighting as well. So let me screenshot some of these locations and fix them in survival world. So once the terrain is properly enlightened, we can start the farms by installing the golems. The absolute easiest way of doing it is to start them from the bottom and build yourselves a way up using the iron blocks from the golems we will be spawning. Like so. And then knocking out these temporary blocks, allowing us to replace these iron trapdoors once the golems move out. So that's it, guys. The farm produces about 31,800 drops per hour, So what happens is when you are AFK, you will eventually run out of food, and that's why we have this regen beacon here shining through the drop shaft. However, this happened to be not enough, as it will only balance out the effects of starvation. Regen is useful if you want, for example, to stay here for 2 or 3 hours. The only way to AFK for some very long times is to get some food in the offhand and have the right click button pressed as well by clicking with the attack button. This will make sure that you eat every time you can, and with a good source of food like steak or pork chop, each piece will give me about 25 minutes of AFKing. So I stayed here for about 15 hours, and that used exactly half of the stack of food I had in my offhand. I have rebound my mouse keys to 2 keys on the keyboard. I placed an allspice ball, these round spices, on the button for the mouse right click with an external USB drive as a weight, and used a clicker program to emulate me using my sword on the other key every 1.1 seconds. With exactly 1 second in between, I was hitting the previously dead witch, since the death animation lasts for 1 second exactly, so I needed a little bit more than that. So if you want to AFK here pretty much indefinitely for whatever reason, you can simply place a dropper next to you with a daylight sensor on its head, and it will give you 1 piece of meat every 20 minutes, which should be sufficient. While we are at it, we can quickly check how the golems are doing after this 20 hours. For that, I'll use a new command I recently started working on. Right now it only displays the health, but that will change in the future. So as we can see, the golems are not at 100%, but we have used about 1% of them in total, producing roughly 160 double chests worth of goodies, not counting potions, and this is fine by me. As we did see, replacing golems is a simple task, and you can also treat them to an occasional splash health potions with the same effect. Apart from decorating the place by adding a few paths around the area, I decided to expand the storage a little bit. So I added this lever here, which if you turn it on will unlock another storage in the basement to more than double the storage capacity. So let's hop here, check it out. So as we can see, this is all filled up, and we have even some sugarcane. So in terms of the sugarcane farm, the main idea was to have something that blends well and gives me a few sugarcane just if I ever needed to craft the rockets to fly back home. Obviously gunpowder shouldn't be a problem. So let's hop to Spectator for a second to check it out. So this one's run off a daylight sensor, so we have a harvest twice a day, and it was a quite tight squeeze here in between the beacon and the signal from the shift detectors. So on the other side of the entrance I also added the button here, just a little bit of symmetry that also manually triggers the ghost light switches. So however, this, despite being a great plan at the beginning, it turned out to be a little bit of a fail, because I realized that, let's get there. If the ghost block generation happens too far from the player, it is not processed by the client and it simply doesn't work. However, we can still use this time switch sensor as a player sleeping detector. Check this out. Pretty cool stuff, isn't it? So at the end, let's quickly check the Nether connection, how it turned out. So, I built this room here over just to cover the redstone bits. Here's the lever to turn off the trapdoor conveyor. And in this area here we can observe the witches waiting to get placed back in the overworld. Obviously normally nobody would be able to see it, but whatever. And here I made a little lookout to the local Nether, just as a reminder where we are at. And if we go back up, we can see we have here the access to the elevator that will warp us through the bedrock to the top platform. And when we are here up top, we can either glide back home with loot or go back to the witch farms. So guys, I really enjoyed working on this project, even if it took me 2 weeks of my free time to sketch it in creative and then 4 weeks to build in survival, and then I fill up the entire storage in less than a day. But I think it's still worth it. So let me know in the comments if you want small tutorials about any of the other things I showed today, on how to compute angles for precise elytra flying, the minecart elevator that goes through the bedrock, or maybe this daylight sensor array comparator thingy that can detect sudden time changes or player sleeping. In any case, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, don't forget to leave a like, comment, share with others, and see you in the next one. Bye bye!